What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Full 90. Now, you will have noticed that I'm in a different location. I'm not in front of my green screen at my apartment, so I'm still figuring out how to set up these videos. I don't know if things will change over the next few weeks, but bear with me. Today, we are here for the Week 8 predictions for the Premier League. If you think I'm a bit red in the face, it's because I am, because I was just getting excited at watching the Man United-Arsenal game. I literally just finished watching it. It's now 10 p.m. Obviously, it was an 8 p.m. kickoff, so I just watched that game, and honestly, the 1-1 draw in the end was probably the fair result. Both teams lacked quality going forward. The second half was very entertaining. At one point, it looked like Arsenal could then go on and win it. At another point, it looked like Man United were going to win it. So I think a draw is probably a fair result. But I do want to give a massive shout out to Hey Now, who left their comments with their score predictions on the previous video. And you guys absolutely smashed the support on the last video, hitting over 200 likes. So I won't go that high, but if we could smash 100 likes on this video once again, that'd be awesome. And if we do keep breaking that, maybe we'll up the like goal and stuff like that. But if you want to shout out in the next episode of the Premier League predictions after the international break, then leave your score predictions down below for week number 8. Now, before we get into that, let's have a look back at week 7 and my predictions. And I do have to say, as well as week 6, week 7 was another very, very good week for me. So, kicking it off, we had Liverpool versus Sheffield United, or Sheffield United versus Liverpool, I should say. I predicted a 3-1 win to Liverpool. It was just a little squeaky bum time 1-0 win to Liverpool. So, right result, wrong score there. Aston Villa versus Burnley, I predicted a 2-1 home win to Aston Villa, and it was that at a point, but then Burnley came back and it was a 2-2 draw, so not too far away. Bournemouth versus West Ham, I correctly predicted a 2-2 draw, which is a pretty good scoreline to predict in my opinion. I'm quite proud of that. The next game, Chelsea versus Brighton, I also correctly predicted the 2-0 scoreline to Chelsea. That's such a Chelsea-Brighton scoreline, you know, Chelsea not even having to get the 3rd, the 4th, or the 5th, just getting a 2-0 win and Brighton not being able to do much about it. That's probably the most common prediction that was made for that game, and it ended up being the right one. The next one was Crystal Palace versus Norwich. I predicted a 1-0 home win to Crystal Palace. It was a 2-0 win to Crystal Palace, so close to the perfect score, but no cigar. Then after that was Tottenham versus Southampton. I predicted a 3-1 win to Tottenham, and it was actually a 2-1 win to Tottenham, so again, very, very close. And after that, I predicted that Wolves would get their first win of the Premier League season with a 2-1 win over Watford. Again, I was very close. It was a 2-0 win over Watford. Coming up after that, we had Everton hosting Manchester City. Again, I was so close. I predicted a 4-1 win to Manchester City, and it was a 3-1 win to Manchester City. Then following up from that was the Leicester versus Newcastle game, where I predicted a 2-0 win to Leicester, and it might have looked a little bit more like that if it wasn't for the red card, but it ended in a 5-0 thrashing for Leicester. And then I predicted that Arsenal would actually finally be able to go to Old Trafford and win 2-1. It looked like it could have happened, but it ended, of course, 1-1. So realistically, a very good week for me. Any result that I did get wrong, I was only 1 goal off. Yeah, the Aston Villa versus Burnley game, I predicted a Villa win. It was a draw. And I predicted Arsenal to beat Man United, but it was a draw. So very close there. Now let's kick it off with the Week 8 fixtures. So to start with, we have Brighton up against Tottenham Hotspur. Now Brighton, they started off the season looking quite good. They actually went to Newcastle and played very, very well, but only got a 0-0 draw out of that. I think them not picking up points in those games is really going to hurt them going later on in the season, and I don't see them getting anything from Tottenham here. So I'm going to go for another 2-0 defeat for Brighton, this time at home, a 2-0 win to Tottenham. The next game is Burnley up against Everton. Everton have been looking not that great. Obviously, they did play against Manchester City, and there were moments in that game when Everton looked like they might actually go and get a winner or something like that. But then as soon as Riyad Mahrez, I believe it was, scored the second goal, Raheem Sterling scored the third, and it looked like a fairly comfortable win for Manchester City in the end. But Everton do not travel very well, and Burnley are usually quite tough to beat at home, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here between the two teams. The next game promises to be a very, very good fixture, and I think if it was at the King Power Stadium, it would be a bit different, but it is Liverpool up against Leicester, and I think Liverpool are looking very, very good. They've had the ugly wins. They beat Sheffield United 1-0. They beat Chelsea the week before 2-1. Both games, they were quite fortunate, I think, to get the win in the end, but they did what had to be done. I think as this one is at Anfield, I think it's going to be more of a clear-cut win, but then again, don't write Leicester off. Do not write Leicester off at all. I think this is going to be a 3-1 win to Liverpool, but Leicester are a team that could upset them. Like I said, if it's at the King Power Stadium, I'd probably go for a 1-1 or a 2-2, but I think Liverpool at Anfield are just a different beast, and I think they will be able to beat Leicester, but I wouldn't put money on this one. I really wouldn't, but I'm going to go for a 3-1 scoreline nonetheless. The next game is Norwich up against Aston Villa, both teams newly promoted and both teams looking for points, and I think it's going to end that way with them settling for a point each, and I'm going to go for another 1-1 scoreline between the two teams. I think Norwich will, I think maybe Pukki will get another goal, because he's been a little bit quiet in the last couple of weeks, and Aston Villa, I think they'll play decently well. They'll have a mistake at the back perhaps to let Pukki run through. They'll score an equaliser, but they won't be able to get the away win. That would be a huge 3 points for them. The next game is Watford up against Sheffield United. Now, Sheffield have been pulling out all the stops against the big boys, you know, Chelsea, Liverpool. They've been doing quite well, and they seem to have settled fairly well in the Premier League so far. I think they're just going to slip up against Watford, who are bottom of the league and haven't won yet, and I'm actually going for Watford to get their first win of the season, a 2-1 win over Sheffield United. The next game is two teams that have started the season fairly well. West Ham up against Crystal Palace, and I'm going for a West Ham win in this one. I think they look quite good at home, and I think they should be able to beat Crystal Palace. I know Palace have travelled fairly well in the past, but I think West Ham will still have just enough to get the win here, so I'm going for West Ham to edge it by 1 goal, a 2-1 scoreline to the Hammers in this fixture. In case you couldn't tell, I'm rushing through these fixtures a little bit because I want to get the predictions to you thick and fast. So the next game is Arsenal up against Bournemouth. Now, as I said, Arsenal, man, it's so hard being an Arsenal fan, right? Because they create, even when they're not creating clear chances, because against Manchester United tonight, there weren't many clear chances, but you still think they can get something, you know? Torreira had a really good chance. Saka had a really good chance that was deflected over the top, and Arsenal looked like they could have won tonight, but then a few times, luckily because Man United aren't the most clinical of teams, Man United didn't really look like scoring that often, and Arsenal are a bit sketchy at the back. David Luiz, there's questions to be asked. Granit Xhaka, club captain now. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe as a leader, he's all right, but he's too rash. He gives away possession too much. He fouls too many people. It's a tough one. So I think there's going to be a lot of goals in this game because Bournemouth have performed fairly well this season. They've started well, similar to how Bournemouth tend to do, and they're very they love going forward. They love scoring goals. It's at the Emirates, so I do back Arsenal to win. In the same way I predicted Arsenal to beat Aston Villa, 3-2. I'm predicting Arsenal to beat Bournemouth, 3-2. The next game is Manchester City up against Wolves at the Etihad Stadium, and is this the third week in a row I would have predicted this scoreline for Manchester City? It is, for the third week running. I just feel like it's going to happen. I'm picking a 4-1 win to Manchester City. I'll get it right eventually. Wolves, they had a great win up against Watford, 2-0 there, of course, and Man City, in the end, did enough to beat Everton, but their weaknesses were shown. Zinchenko had a bit of an off game, and usually when Man City, I think whenever Man City plays Zinchenko, they win all the time. There's definitely a statistic to back that up, and not necessarily through the fault of Zinchenko directly. It just seemed to be a common denominator, but he really didn't play that well at Goodison Park. But I think Man City, the Etihad, will be too much for Wolves. In the past, Wolves has been a bogey team for Manchester City, but I think this time Man City will get the job done. Now, the next game is a very interesting one, and it's one I've gone for a little bit of a shock result. It is Southampton up against Chelsea. Chelsea have been all up and down, whether that's Champions League. I haven't actually watched them in the second round of the Champions League yet. Whether that's, I don't even know if it would have happened by the time this video goes up, actually. I'm not entirely sure. Whether that's, the Premier League against, say, Sheffield United when they threw away their lead, but then sometimes they look really good, like when they played the first half an hour against Man United before they got slapped 4-0, they looked all right. When they played Liverpool, they looked good. So you don't know what you're going to get, and Southampton are kind of the same, but at home they're looking very decent, I would say, and I just get the feeling that Southampton might score a goal early on and it really rile up the crowd, rile up the team. I feel like Southampton might be able to get something out of this game, so I'm going to go for an all-action 2-2 draw in this fixture. I think that'd be quite a cool prediction to get right. And the final one, it is a must win for Manchester United. It's essentially a must win for Newcastle as well. Newcastle, if you didn't know, were one of the 3 teams I predicted to get relegated this season, but they really haven't been looking that great, Newcastle, and they did look very out of their depth against Leicester. I know they had 10 men for a lot of that game, but still, they were never going to get in that game with 11 men. I still think it would have been 3-0 if it was 11v11 the entire game. They just don't look like winning a game. And I think Man United will be able to go to St James's Park and carve out a win. I think it's going to be close because United are in a bit of trouble right now. They're having injury issues. They're playing Europa League on the Thursday. So I'm going to go for a very tight 2-1 Manchester United win. So that is going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave a like on it. Subscribe today. Turn on the bell so you don't miss a single video. There won't be another video for a couple of weeks from now because it will be the international break. I'm taking a break from this channel. But it is a lot of fun as always. Leave your likes, your comments down below. I read them all, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.